Okay, here we go. Another fun day with a video. Yesterday we did problem number 12 in section 2.3. Today we're going to go ahead and do 13 and then finish the ones on the back as well. So let's take a look at number 13. It says tangent of theta is 1/2 and sine of theta is less than 0. So it's just like yesterday. We need to find the remaining trig functions, and we really want to try and find sine and cosine first. Unfortunately, it just gave us tangent. Even if I do the reciprocal, which is cotangent, that's still not going to get me sine or cosine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my formula sheet and see if there are any other formulas there that I might be able to use involving tangent. Well, can't use this one because I don't have either one of these. This one will get me cotangent, but that's not really going to get me very far. Excuse me. Well, this one has tangent in it. And if I plug in and find tangent, then I can find secant. And what's secant's reciprocal? Cosine. So that's a good choice to use for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and write down the formula. Tangent squared theta plus 1 equals secant squared. And then just plug in the tangent, which is 1/2. Now these are on the same side here, so when I square this, I'll just add them together. So again, when I square this, like I talked about yesterday, I don't bother to type this in the calculator. It's more work than it's worth. So I just square that individually. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. Add the 1. Now 1/4 plus 1, if you want to do that in your calculator, think of 1 as 4/4, so you get 5/4, or like I said, you can just put it in your calculator. I'm going to go ahead and switch these and move secant squared to this side and put my 5/4 to this side. I didn't have to change signs, I just moved this one here and that one there, because 1/4 plus 1 is 5/4. Now I want to find secant, so I have to get rid of the squared. So secant theta equals plus or minus the square root of 5. The square root of 4 is 2. So I've got plus or minus the square root of 5/2. Well, I have to figure out whether it's going to be positive or negative. So it tells me that sine is negative, and it tells me here that tangent is positive 1/2. So I'm going to have to do that little all students calc, take calc deal to figure out what quadrant this is, and then I'll know whether secant's positive or negative. So tangent is positive, sine is negative. So if tangent's positive, it can't be here and it can't be here. If sine is negative, it can't be here where they're all positive. So it has to be here in quadrant 3. So in quadrant 3, only tangent and cotangent are positive. Everything else is negative. So that means that secant is negative square root of 5/2. Well, now that I have secant, what's its reciprocal? That's right, cosine. So we can just flip to get cosine. Now, of course, we can't leave it that way. We need to rationalize. So you're going to multiply the top and the bottom by square root of 5 and get negative 2 square root of 5/5. So now we finally have cosine, but we still don't have sine. So when we have cosine and we don't have sine, we fall back on that same one we used from yesterday. Sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. That's a one that, like I said before, you're going to use a lot. So I don't know sine squared. I'm going to plug in for cosine. So sine squared. Now this part a lot of people mess up on. Be really careful here when you square these individually. First of all, it's negative, but a negative squared will be positive. What's the square root of 5 squared? Well, square root of 5 times square root of 5 is 5. What's 2 squared? 2 times 2 is 4 times 5 is 20. 5 squared is 25 equals 1. Now, you can reduce that now, or when we bring it over, it'll automatically reduce, because these are both divisible by 5, and you'd get 4/5. Now I want to solve for sine, so I need to subtract this to the other side. So we'll get the calculator out. And we'll do 1 minus 20 over 25. And we get 1/5. Now I don't want sine squared, so I have to do the square root. I get sine of theta equals plus or minus the square root of 1/5. Now the problem is, of course, I can't have that square root in the denominator. So I need to rationalize. So I get plus or minus the square root of 5 over 5. Now, as we determined earlier in the problem, the only ones positive for this problem are tangent and cotangent. So sine is going to be negative. All right, so let's see what we need here. We have secant. We have cosine. We have sine. We were given tangent. What else do we need? Well, we need cotangent. So cotangent's reciprocal is tangent. We're going to like this one. If tangent is 1/2, then cotangent's just 2. And then we need cosecant. Cosecant's reciprocal is sine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just do it right up here and flip it, where I have the square root of 1 over 5. If I flip it here, I'll have to rationalize, and nobody wants to do that if they don't have to. So we'll flip right here, so you'll just have negative square root of 5. So now we have all of them, cotangent, cosecant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're given tangent. If any part of this doesn't make sense, I would just rewind and watch it over again, or call me over, and I'd be glad to look at your notes and go through anything you're unsure of. What we're going to do now is take a look at the ones on the back. We did A and B yesterday. We're going to look at C, D, and E. These are just like how to get started. We're not going to do the whole problem. Like I said before, students have said to me in the past, it's not that once I get going I'm confused. It's just starting that confuses me. So looking at letter C, you're given secant. Again, you always want to be trying to think, if I need all of them, I want sine and I want cosine. Well, what do you know about secant? Well, its reciprocal is cosine. So you can find cosine right off the bat there. Then you can just go to this formula to find sine. And you're good to go. Now, as far as the signs of the trig functions, we go and do the little all students take calc for this one again. Secant is negative, which makes cosine negative, and tangent is negative. So if cosine is negative, it can't be here or here, and if tangent is negative, it can't be here. So when you do this problem, if you did this problem, only sine and cosecant would be positive. Everything else would be negative. And again, this is just how to start these, not to actually do them. Taking a look at letter D, this is very similar to the one we did on the front, where you're given tangent. Well, cotangent isn't going to help me anymore get sine or cosine. I need to go back to that formula we used a few minutes ago, the one that has the tangent squared in it, right here. Tangent squared theta plus 1 equals secant squared theta. Plug in for tangent, solve for secant. So you would use this formula, and you would find secant, and then you could find cosine. Once you did that, you go back to this formula to find sine. And again, once you have sine and cosine, you're pretty much set. Now look at this mess here, 180, 270. This is similar to one you did in the homework. So it says between 270 and 180. So here's 270, here's 180. What quadrant is this? This is quadrant 3. So I would say quadrant 3. And what do you know about quadrant 3? All students take, only tangent and cotangent will be positive if you were to do that problem. The last one, letter E. Here you're given cotangent. Again, I could flip it and find tangent, and I could really use this one if I wanted to. But I'm going to look at my formula sheet and see if there's anything with cotangent in it. So here's a cotangent. If I plug in cotangent, I can find cosecant. Once I have cosecant, its reciprocal is sine, I can find sine. Again, the other option is you could take the reciprocal of this and plug it into this formula again and find secant. There's more than one way to do most of these problems. So we're going to go ahead and use the cotangent formula just to give you some practice with that. So we would use 1 plus cotangent squared theta equals cosecant squared theta. And then we could find cosecant. Once we do that, we can find sine. Once we have sine, we go back to this formula and find cosine. Now the last part says theta is between pi over 2 and pi. So find pi over 2 and pi. What quadrant is that? That's quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, think about it, all students. So sine and cosecant would be positive. All the rest would be negative. Again, if you need help with any of this, call me over and I'd be glad to go through it. Now your assignment, page 120, 41 to 47 odd. Right here. Same thing you did yesterday. Same directions. Find all the rest of the trig functions. 41, 47, same directions. Find the exact value of each of the following remaining trigonometric functions, big word. And the answers I've posted, so after you do these, you can check them. And that's it.